So, can a long-term live-in relationship ever be considered rape if the marriage never happens? Is this ruling a safeguard against the misuse of rape laws, or is it a setback for women's protection? And should the law differentiate between short-term deception and prolonged consensual relationships? Those are the questions which were raised today after, in a significant verdict, the Supreme Court quashed a rape case where a woman had accused her partner of 16 years of falsely promising marriage. The court had ruled that a long-term consensual relationship cannot be classified as rape solely on the basis of a broken promise to marry. The ruling stated that consent given over such a prolonged period signifies free will and agency. A broken promise does not automatically constitute rape unless there's clear evidence that the accused never intended to marry from the start. The fact that the complaint was filed only after the man married another woman raised concerns of ulterior motives in the eyes of the bench. Furthermore, the court also emphasized that prolonged relationships make it difficult to prove coercion or deceit. In this case, both parties were well educated, and the woman willingly stayed in this relationship for 16 years. The court has therefore questioned whether such a long period of consent could truly be considered as anything which would facilitate rape. But not everyone agrees. Critics argue that this ruling could weaken legal protections for women. They suggest that it might set a dangerous precedent, making it harder for women to claim coercion in long-term live-in relationships. And then the question comes about power imbalances. Should courts consider emotional and financial dependencies before dismissing such cases as automatic consent being given? Can financial control or social stigma blur the lines of true consent? Some fear that if men can walk away scot-free from long-term live-in relationships, it would encourage more abandonment. Then there's an even contentious issue that comes in. Should the law create financial safeguards for women in such cases? It is possible in some countries. So then what does the ruling mean for you? If you're in a live-in relationship, what legal rights do you have? Can a failed relationship be equated to a criminal act? Should there not be clearer legal frameworks to then protect both men and women in long-term live-in relations? Let's go across at this point to my guests who are joining me. We have Deepika Bhardwaj, noted documentary filmmaker and activist. I'm also being joined by Khushbu Jain, who is an advocate. Lalitha Kumaramangalam is, of course, a former chairperson of the NCW. And Rekha Agarwal is a noted family lawyer. Lalitha ji, let me begin with you first. You are a former NCW chairperson. You've dealt with several such issues here. What is your instinctive reaction when you read the headline? And the headline that went in, there was a lot of nuance in this court verdict, but the headline that came in said that there's no rape possible in a long-term live-in relationship here. Do you think it's a dangerous oversimplification that we are now looking at if a live-in relationship spans an extended period of time, it implies that there was automatically consent always there across both parties?
I think that the Supreme Court perhaps has jumped the gun. I don't think the ruling is totally wrong, but several issues have not been taken into account. A couple of them you yourself mentioned, that is the imbalance of power, not just financial, but also social and sexual. Also, if there is a long-term relationship, there is no guarantee that there's never been any sort of violence in the relationship. Now, this lady may not have claimed violence except sexual violence. There are other forms of violence that could have been practiced, like in any other long-term relationship anywhere in the world, including India. Secondly, if in the beginning it is true that the woman only agreed to a live-in relationship because the man said he would marry her, then even if it's not rape, it is, a breach of promise. There are many laws under which women should be protected. And one more point that you also mentioned is that, and many people are asking this, so am I, 16 years is a very long time in the life of any person, especially a woman who's known to have had a long-term relationship with a particular partner. If she's had no financial security from that, or maybe that should be occur both ways. But in this case, we're talking about the women because it's normally, even today, women are financially far weaker than men in most relationships. So if there is none of that in a long-term relationship, at least the Supreme Court should look into making safeguards. Maybe that's not part of the ambit of this case, but they could, I feel very strongly, they could have at least mentioned these issues Because when the Supreme Court mentions it, people sit up and listen, either criticize, agree, or at least some action that could be taken. See, after 16 years, none of us really know what went on in that relationship. We know what the lady has approached the court for. There may be many men who may be on the side of the man, but if after 16 years he has married somebody else, then did he think about the fact that a woman who has spent 16 years with him, what sort of aftermath she would face, not just personally or financially,
But
but even
Lalita
otherwise in
ji,
society? We are very, very quick to point fingers at the women.
but
But
Lalita
it
ji,
is still
here's
true
the
that the men
point.
get away with a lot.
Here's the point, and it is as much a reflection on our society as on the legal system as it or anyone else. One can
Yes.
understand that one can have all sympathies for the woman in this case, that for 16 years probably she had hopes for a future. Maybe the man had honest intentions. Whatever, she might have felt jilted. She would have felt betrayed that her future had disappeared. Maybe there was a financial loss as well. Does that
Yes.
amount to filing of a rape case? And that it becomes then a very serious matter, yeah, and you bring in an entirely very serious issue of rape and whether what actually counts as rape. Deepika Bhardwaj, you have been an outspoken advocate for men's rights for several years. What is your assessment of the Supreme Court ruling in this Levin case? Do you see this as a necessary safeguard against the misuse of rape laws?
Ritangshu, I think somewhere I'm very disappointed that Lalita ma'am would on one hand say that women continue to be financially dependent, and if there is a long-term relationship then she can just go and file a rape case. Let's understand the gravity of offense of rape. It's a very, very serious offense. It's one of the offenses that carries the maximum punishment, and if broken relationships are turning into rape cases, it is very, very sad. And let me give you some data, Ritangshu. This is not just one case. In 2015, number of rape cases filed on false promise of marriage were just 19% of the total reported rape cases in India. It went up to being 51% of the total rape cases registered by 2019. So any broken relationship, whether that has lasted from 6 months to 6 years to 16 years, just because the woman felt jilted, she's accusing the man of rape. And let us understand that the man in this particular case used to be a constable. This woman herself was not financially dependent. She's a professor working in a very, very good university. So she's not financially dependent on him. It is just sheer revenge that she went on and filed a rape case. And this man did not get relief at the level of the police, which understood that this case is being filed after 16 years of relationship. He did not get relief at the High Court. High Court understanding that this is a broken affair
Okay.
turning into rape case. He had to go to the Supreme Court. And last but not the least, Ritangshu, Supreme Court has several times said that broken relationships cannot be reported as rape, but they continue being reported as rape, to the fact of absolutely ridiculous cases where a married woman is claiming that she was given a false promise of marriage. Supreme Court recently quashed a rape case like that as well. Imagine the agony of the man. Imagine the
Okay.
suffering of the man. Can a woman be put into rape charges if she broke up after 10 years of relationship, no matter how hurt the man felt? Is marriage, how can rape be related to marriage? I don't understand. I mean, they were in a relationship, whether, and since
That
you spoke a lot about live-in relationship is
okay.
not a relationship where you have to give commitment. Live-in relationship is move in, move out relationship. Do not get in live-in relationship if your aim objective is to get married. Then search a partner who is willing to get married to you. Don't get into a live-in
No, no.
relationship and get into
No, no, Deepika.
experimentation.
See, no, no, Deepika. Deepika, I don't think. I mean, there's a problem with live-in relationships and what the government increasingly, as we saw in the case of Uttarakhand, wants to view live-in relationships as quasi-marriages, which is why it wants to give couples the same protection and the same responsibilities that married couples do. At the same time, I don't think necessarily that one should not get into a live-in relationship if one wants to get married. A lot of couples look at a live-in relationship as
No,
a
no,
test
all
of
that. No, Ritangshu,
compatibility
I'm not.
because we all know
People
how
are.
difficult it is to get divorced in this country.
No, no, people are absolutely free to get into relationship, to get into any kind of relationship they want. But if it breaks down, don't turn it into a criminal offense. Is all I'm saying. Neither the man should do it, nor the woman
Okay.
should do it. Part
Okay.
ways amicably if you came together amicably.
Can I come in here,
Okay.
please?
Rekha Agarwal and Khushbu Jain are
While I
also joining me. I'm very...
appreciate the, while I
Lalita ji,
appreciate,
if I could beg your... Okay, can you make a quick point? Because
yes,
I've been
just two
joined by
quick
our other
points.
guests
While I
also, and I'm sure they
appreciate
also want to
Deepika's
join in this
empathy
debate.
for the men,
Yeah.
let's not fool ourselves into thinking in society women and men are equal in any sort of relationship, except maybe a minuscule number. Yes, women are more economically independent on all of that. But if you look at any sort of social cultural milieu, it's we are still very unequal. That doesn't mean that a woman files a false complaint. If this is a false complaint, then yes, the man should not have been
Exactly.
punished. But there are many relationships where we don't know what's going on. We need to look into this. If the Supreme Court has given this, then maybe they have looked into it in more detail. But I feel that it's very facile to say that the man can just get
But
away.
ma'am...
16 years. I mean, how many of us get
But
into
ma'am,
live-in relationships
you know
thinking we
better
will
than
get
most
married
people.
soon?
But ma'am, you know better than most people in our country the process of punishment. This case has come up till the Supreme Court before that man was quashed. Can you imagine the number of years he would have gone through from the lower courts to the high court to having this taint of a rape charge against him till the Supreme Court has finally said that no, he is innocent. So it's not, I don't think it's an issue of men, of which gender is better off, which gender is superior or has better equipped thanks to patriarchy. Rekha Agarwal, come in on the point which Deepika ji was mentioning. Is the point then, is the problem in a system from the fact that there is no legal recourse available to someone who feels naturally cheated or betrayed emotionally or financially in a relationship if suddenly a long-term partner of 16 years decides to move on, and therefore the only recourse available to that person, often through encouragement of legal assistance, is to file a false rape case, because technically the provision does exist in the BNS or the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita.
See, the answer to this, Ritangshu, is very difficult to say, but I can't answer as yes or no, because I think this is a total gray area and everything will depend upon the facts of a particular case. It's very easy to kind of compartmentalize it and say that, yes, the man had a live-in relationship for 16 years and, oh God, he's cheated her, he's dropped her like a hot potato, or he had no right to do it. He should have got married to her, having given her the promise and assurance that I am going to get married. 16 years is a long time. But at the same time, can you force somebody to get married? No, you can't. And so if the woman has been in a live-in relationship for 16 years and the man is still not got married to her, certainly she's not a babe in the woods, who's been, looking at that lollipop and say, oh God, after someday he's going to get married to me. And that someday continues into 16 long years. This is more than Vanvas also. 14 years is also over. So I think that if the Honorable Supreme Court has given this judgment, where it says that a long-term live-in relationship is no rape. Now, first of all, there is no hard and fast rule which can say what is a long-term. Long-term again depends upon the facts of each case. Probably even 1 year,
Exactly.
even 6 months to 1 year may end up into a live-in relationship. Technically, as per the Supreme Court, a long-term. So long-term, supposing a young couple has been living together for 1 year, 6 months, 8 months, it stretches into 1 year. And the man suddenly says, I don't want to marry you. Now, what happens if the woman says, I don't want to marry you? The man doesn't have any recourse. So when we're talking about gender neutrality, I think it's very easy for anybody to paint a man black and to paint a woman as a bichara woman, who's got, oh God, she's just been taken for a ride. I think in every case, with utmost regard to the Honorable Supreme Court, every case depends upon its facts. No, there is no straitjacket formula where you can say that a long-term live-in relationship, and if there's a promise to marry and he doesn't marry her, that will amount to rape. It will not amount to rape. It will depend upon the fact. Even a 16-year-old relationship where the man has probably taken her for a he's really actually emotionally kind of given her that hope, which it's been probably she's walking on the razor's edge. It's like a last straw on her, she's been holding on with the hope that yes, someday he's going to marry me, because she wants that legal sanctity, the social approval, which only the marriage tag when that I am married to this, I'm not just a concubine. So I think that it is very easy to generalize and say that all men are black and all women are probably cheating men, or they're bichara women who have got they have nothing but to depend upon law. So they can be, now yes, the BNS says yes, promise to marry, and if you don't fulfill that promise and have a physical relationship with a woman, it does amount to rape. Yes, fair enough. But with, as I said, that there can be no formula which says that yes, every man is guilty or every man is not guilty. It will depend
No,
upon the facts and things, the total gray area.
Kushbu, Rekha Agarwal ji, see, I genuinely have questions about Section 69 of BNS. To
Yes.
my understanding, I'm not a woman, obviously, so I'm not best equipped. But my understanding is rape is forced sexual consent through physical or emotional psychological means. A promise to wedding, sometimes today I can promise to marry a partner I'm living with. When 1 year or 2 years later, I may find out some attributes about her which I may find undesirable in a real relationship, and I should have the autonomy to break off the relationship and not have the threat of a
Yes.
rape case hanging over me.
Yes.
Advocate, at this point, Khushbu Jain, you're also an advocate in the Supreme Court. I agree on merit that, with what Rekha ji was saying is that cases should be dealt with on a merit basis here, because no two cases are the same. But that's not practically feasible in a judiciary like ours, where there's crores of cases lying in a backlog. There have to be a bit more evolved and developed rational guiding norms here. And in this case, the outstanding feature was that how can a woman be in a relationship with 16 years and still believe that she was going to get married to him at the end of it? If that time period was brought down to 1 year, would the court have then seen this man as a guilty party of rape?
No. See, I will beg to differ on this. Let's go a little behind and understand that whole issue is about the aspect that a promise to marry, a false promise to marry, and with that false promise to marry, you make that the woman, you deceive a woman with the intention that you deceive a woman for her to have a physical relationship with you. So ideally, two people in a relationship, if a person, a man, uh, wants that woman to trust him and then says that I'm going to marry you tomorrow, day after, a year later, or maybe 5 years later, and puts across that because of that marriage, then that lady feels that, okay, I'm secure enough, my future is going to be with him, and that's why I am crossing the line of getting physical with him. That's where we are talking about that misconception. And at the first time, I, as a man, did not ever had an intention to marry her. That intention is very important, because as rightly said by you, today I want to marry, but tomorrow, maybe after a year of spending time together, either a boy or a girl, none of them feel like getting married, or one person doesn't feel like continuing it. That happens in the marriage as well, right? 5 years of relationship, marriage, you don't feel compatible, and people part ways, or there is a divorce. Do you file a case that, okay, you lived 5 years with me, now you're not going to live with me forever, and I see my life till I die to be with you, so I'm going to file a rape with you? No, doesn't happen. Same thing happens here also. The whole idea of bringing that promise to marriage was because there were a lot of cases where men used to say that because you're not crossing that line, I would go and tell you that I'm going to marry you, and with that deception, you fool that lady, and she would do something which ideally she was not willing to do in a casual relationship or in a relationship where there is no commitment of marriage. That deception is the one which will come under the category of rape, and that's very clear by the court. Now, when you talk about the case in hand, which is 15 years of thing, see, a live-in relationship and a marriage, anywhere you can commit, say that it can be a rape, provided it has been put across in a manner it can be. And I think there has been a debate when it comes to marital rape, and a live-in relationship rape would be equal than a marital rape if marital rape becomes legal per se. And again, one has to look into the case in hand. Is there any physical force? Is there has been separation? Because people living in together can have issues. Consent is a very, very delicate aspect when it comes to a relationship. It can be marriage or a live-in relationship, and not every relationship going little south can have an aspect where the other spouse or other live-in partner can go and complain that there is no consent on that specific day. That's why I want to file for a rape case. I think that matter is still pending. But the law, which is very clear when it comes to aspect of false promise to marriage with the intention to deceive the other person so that that person believes into it and crosses that line and have a physical relationship with you, is the aspect that would be amounting to rape, nothing beyond that or anything else in that matter. Now, each and every case will be different when it
No,
comes
but
to
the
the
problem
facts
with
to
that,
put across that how the lady was deceived.
Khushbu Jain, to a layperson like me, this concept of deception or intent to deceive is very much similar to this concept of cruelty, which is misused and abused so much when we see in marital cases at this point. The problem is that we don't have safeguards. You mentioned that, yes, a person, or if a marriage breaks down into divorce, obviously the case of rape is not filed because marital rape today does not exist. That's a separate debate. But there is still the case of revenge cases, of false dowry cases, false domestic violence cases, which are still filed at this point. There is no checks and balance to prevent the case of vindictive filing of cases here, whatever cases are available to a person and to a woman in her presence. And isn't that a core issue that needs to also be addressed, Khushbu Jain?
I'll beg to differ on this part because we have to throw light that there are enough and more of cases which have been there where women have been victim of men, where they use this marriage as a tool.
Certainly.
And that tool has been utilized to make them sleep with them or have a physical relationship with them. Looking at that aspect, we're coming in. Now, if there are 2 cases or 3 cases or 10 cases which have been misused, we cannot say that the law has to go away. Yes, safeguard part, that's why I said that there has to be safeguard because the whole aspect will lie on how you have deceived. Because tomorrow, after 5 years or 2 years, you don't want to marry, cannot be considered as deceiving. But there are cases where a man is already married, but he says that I'm not married and continues a relationship and said that I'm going to marry with you. There are cases like that where they had never had any intention, but they promised. There have been cases where they're having same 2 relationship, 3 relationship at the same time, and they said, I'm going to marry you, I'm going to marry you, I'm going to marry you. Or there are cases where they take them and they do it. So there are different cases. That's why I said that how a person has deceived is independent to each case and would be decided in case. But to fit into the criteria of a rape, when it comes to false promise of marriage, has to have an ingredient of intention to defraud at the first place by lying that I'm going to marry.
Okay, so you're essentially saying that we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And the reason, yeah, okay. I think both Deepika and Rekha ji want to come in. Deepika, you agree with that at the end of the day, there is a valid ground as to why this penal provision for deceptively having sexual relations with someone on the promise of marriage exists, and that cannot go out even if there are cases of misuse which do come out, which are then highlighted and pointed out by the Supreme Court.
Ritangshu, first of all, there are, it's not 8, 10 cases. Majority of these cases of false promise of marriage are false. I am going to tell you about a case which which we have recently won in the Supreme Court of India. It was a blatantly false rape case filed by a woman in Delhi who just not filed this false rape case on the person that I was helping. She has filed 9 rape and molestation cases within Delhi in 10 years, out of which several cases were this Shadi Ka Jhansa only. This is a married woman having 2 children, then claiming that she was given Shadi Ka Jhansa. In Gurgaon, I exposed a woman who had filed 9 rape cases on false promise of marriage on 9 different boys within 1 year. There are several such cases that are happening across the country. You consensually have sex, you consensually have a relationship, and then because you do not have any evidence to prove that the man did anything wrong to you, you make this up as इसने तो मुझे शादी का झांसा दिया था. No evidence required, Ritangshu. Please mark this point. No evidence required. Just testimony of a woman. Just a mere statement that he gave me shadi ka jhansa gets a man behind bars. He spends years or months in jail. He's immediately arrested for such a serious offense. And then after years and years, he's acquitted and he's turned innocent. And nothing is given to him as compensation for his entire life being destroyed. And to the to point of Khushbu ma'am, just day before yesterday, there's a guy 40-year-old who has died by suicide because a married woman got him into a relationship saying she's single, and then she was deceiving him. Could that man have gone and filed a rape case? If men would have gone and filed rape cases like this, women's rights activists would have gone on streets and said that how can you accuse a woman of rape like that if she chooses to move on? Why such different standards? Why such absolutely different stands for a criminal offense? And no punishment, by the way, no punishment whatsoever. Even in this case, the Supreme Court decided, I have read the entire judgment. It is a blatantly false case, which was given the shield of false promise of marriage. There are several lies that the woman said in the complaint, which are very, very visible and practically seen. But no punishment. Why? If a rapist is punished, should the women who are filing false rape cases not be punished? Why our courts are having such different stands in these cases? A criminal is a criminal. If a man deceives a woman, okay, punish him. What is the punishment for a woman if she deceives a man? Nothing. We are in 21st century.
Fair
Let's
enough.
talk neutral if we are
I
really
think
talking about
the
equality.
point. No, no. No, the thing is, from what
Has
I
not said
understand
the
from both
truth.
Khushbu and
Don't
Deepika ji's
equate rape with
statements is
cheating.
that
I'm sorry I interrupted, but I feel very strongly
yes,
about this.
that's
This particular
exactly my
woman may
point,
have done
Lalita ji. The
something wrong,
problem, if so that
but rape
exactly,
and
I know
cheating are
Rekha
not the
Agarwal
same
wanted to
thing.
come in. Lalita, I'm Lalita ji. I'm so glad you made that point. Who is equating rape with cheating? That's the basic policy of that's the very ethos of the law that exists in the United States. For instance, if there is a breach of promise for marriage, there are civil lawsuits which are filed, not criminal charges. In France, for instance, there are financial aid which is provided as secure for cohabitation laws, which is why you have the concept of civil
Well, we can
partnership
change the
existing in these
law. Ask
countries.
for that.
They're not criminalized as rape. Why? If I can understand again that someone will want to feel cheated, that someone wanted to marry me for whatever reasons did not marry me. Why is it being criminalized with rape? Should that distinction not be drawn, Rekha ji?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. And that is why I think in such kind of cases, the Domestic Violence Act, the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 will come into play, because here, if a man and a woman have been, so therefore, definitely the man will not be charged with rape. Supposing in this particular case, since they've lived together for 16 years, so it amounts to a domestic relationship, in
If they
terms
were
of the
not in a
Domestic Violence
live-in,
Act
they were not in a
2005.
live-in.
Therefore, since Domestic Violence Act 2005 applies even to live-in relationships, not to marriage only, or not to just to a husband and wife. It applies to any two persons, including two men. Whenever a female is living with a man, whether it is a husband, whether it is a father or brother or uncle, but if she's living in a domestic
Yes.
relationship, which in this particular case, the complainant has been living. So I think I agree with Lalita ji over here, that rape and deception are two different things. So
Yes.
if a woman has been in a relationship for 16 long years with a man, and the man does not marry her, that's a different thing altogether. But if he has committed any kind of cruelty upon her, whether it is mental, physical or sexual, then she has a recourse to law under the Domestic Violence Act
Yes.
2005, but not under the criminal law, that is not under BNS. So definitely a man who cheats in a case like this, where he has a relationship for 16 long years, then the woman does have a recourse to law, because that is a question you asked me, Ritangshu, that what happens to a woman like this? Then she should go under the
Exactly.
Domestic Violence Act 2005 and file a complaint for cruelty, whether it is
But she
emotional
did, because
cruelty, where she can say you did
but
not marry. She cannot say why you have not
but
married
she
me.
did not.
But
Rekha
yes,
Agarwal ji,
she
she
can make
very
a complaint of
clearly
other things.
specified in this case that she has filed for rape not under any physical or sexual assault against consent. She has filed for rape because the partner of 16 years did not marry her, and which
So
is why,
that will be
Lalitha
emotional.
Kumaramangalam ji,
That will
the
be
point
emotional
is,
cruelty.
should
That
the
will be emotional cruelty, mental
yes,
violence.
but
So
then
therefore, she has a
should
recourse to
cheating
law.
and rape not be distinguished? Okay, Lalita
So-
Kumar ji, should cheating and Lalita Kumaramangalam ji, should cheating and rape not be distinguished then, so as to ensure
Absolutely.
that these cases do not
Absolutely.
overlap?
If in this case,
if a
the
woman
gentleman
breaks
is,
up from a man, should she also be charged for cruelty in a criminal
why not?
offense?
If
She
you want to
chooses to
amend
move
if you
on,
want to amend the law
why
and
should
say
be
that
a
women
broken
have been cruel
relationship a
to men,
criminal
yes.
offense? No, why
Ms.
should a
Bharadwaj,
breakup be a criminal
Ms.
offense? We are
Bharadwaj,
not
let me
children.
answer.
We are
Let
not
me
children. We are
reply.
adults. We
One
are
second,
Let me
Deepika ji,
adults. We are extra.
reply.
I think
Deepika, let
advanced in
Lalita ji
age.
Ms.
answer.
Bharadwaj, let me reply.
Deepika, you put
I'm
your
quite
point.
willing to reply to your question.
Deepika, you put your point.
Look,
Lalita ma'am,
Ritangshu,
please go
if
ahead and
a
respond.
woman has
Lalita ma'am,
behaved
go ahead and
wrongly
respond.
with a man, then yes, men should also have recourse under the law. I am not
Yes.
saying that. I have never argued inequality under the law. What I am saying is that rape is different from this. In this case, increasingly it seems as if the woman has misused the law. Right? She should be punished. Perhaps under the law, we should ask
Yes.
for an amendment where we say men can also ask for financial recompense. But that does not mean, and that does not, I don't think it's correct of us to assume that every woman who cries rape is not fair, is lying. This is what I'm
Nobody
trying to
said
say
that.
here. Under
Nobody
the law,
said that.
many people misuse it. I'm not saying this lady may not have or may have. I don't know the entire details of the case. But to say or to assume that every woman who says that I have undergone rape, whether it is marital or any other form of rape in a relationship with a man, is lying, that's also not fair. if
So
men
nobody
are
said that,
being
ma'am.
unnecessarily or
And
falsely
Kushbujan,
accused, harassed,
Nobody
okay.
said
etc.,
that, ma'am. Please
yes,
don't
No,
it is
point
also
taken.
misconstrue.
a
Point,
pretext under the
no,
law
no,
to get
point.
recompense.
No, point taken, and I think Lalita ji is making a very important point. Khushbu Jain and Rekha ji, I'll come to you for the last word before I need to wrap up. Khushbu Jain, the key concern which I had when I first read the story is that this case should probably not be seen as a pretext to set the
Yes.
precedent that if you have been in a long-term relationship, in a live-in relationship with someone from 16 years, you're immune from the possibility of being raped. While, yes, rape under Section 16 and 69 of BNS is a completely different charge, it is also very important to safeguard the safety of women, even if they've been in a relationship for multiple years, because on the 16th year, if there is a sexual assault, if there is a forced physical consent, that should not remove a woman's rights of safety, of justice.
Absolutely. That's where I say that protecting women and protecting the laws which are protecting women are very crucial, very essential. And I think Mirror now are very vocal when it comes to laws protecting women, and we are seeing what things are happening. So it is very crucial that these laws exist. I understand that it is equally important that we need to ensure that these laws are not being misused or being utilized by people for ulterior motives. But I think because of that, we cannot take away these laws. There can be a balanced approach where can be more enhanced safeguards when it comes to investigating and registering these kind of cases, especially when you talk about pretext of marriage, false pretext of marriage converting into a rape kind of cases. And with that enhanced layer, I think a little bit more solution can come in. Again, I'm saying, I think Rekha ji will agree with me that the courts have been very vocal when it comes to giving a definition to false pretext of marriage, and also when it comes to marital rape aspect, and that has to be very seen in a case-to-case basis. But these laws cannot be taken away because they were meant for a purpose to safeguard women and the way women are going through and looking at the larger issues. But I think an aspect when it comes to strict understanding, bringing in those aspects when it comes to investigation before converting them into an FIR and or an arrest for that matter. And the second layer, that if found that this was being done absolutely or with a false motive to harass the other party, there can be a stricter punishment in that regard. And I think that's something which can be a balanced view. But again,
Okay.
you have to draw a line over there. You cannot take away those rights because they're meant and they were bought in for the
Okay.
purpose. And we are in the journey, being women, equally represent equally 50% there in our country, still fighting for our rights, still fighting things. There would be these cases which will come in where it has been misused. I'm taking that part, but I think we have to take it that these numbers will be there. Any law which bring in, there is an element of misusing those laws, but that cannot be a reason to take away those laws. Rather, we can use those cases to bring in more
But
changes
that
in the
could
laws when it
also,
comes to
but if I
implementation
may
and
say, that's
safeguarding.
also, if I may say, that's also not a reason for these laws to not be amended, not be, or not a scope for
Absolutely.
improving or
I
in
am in for amendment. I'm
the wording of the
absolutely.
laws
See,
or the
laws have to
implementation of
evolve.
laws.
Laws have to
Yes,
evolve with
yes.
time.
So the scope should always be there to improve laws. Absolutely. The laws have to evolve. And I think our core problem is that we still don't have a clear definition of what exactly a live-in relationship is in this country at
Yes.
this point. Is it an informal agreement? Is
Yeah.
it one step short of a formal marriage contract? We still don't know. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have on this debate. Part one of a very special urban debate on love and relationships in urban India. Deepika ji and Khushbu ji, I'm going to thank you there. But Lalita ma'am and Rekha ji, stay on with me on the other important debate that we're looking at, this term which I learned today. It's known as sleeping divorces, what that is. I'll explain to you after 30 seconds. Stay tuned.